Oops.
Well, welcome to yet another LinkedIn Live with Fighting for the Right to Party with the rock star that is Joel Felsenstein and the founder of RockstarX. Joel, how has your day been?
Busy, running after my dog as per usual, and of course various meetings all day long. I should really mention at this point that my dog is now has demanded that he joins us, so he's falling asleep on the floor next to me.
Ah, amazing. Well, I'm sure we can get a live introduction at some point during tonight's talk. But yet an interesting topic, yet another interesting topic, should I say. And you've had some pretty strong topics over the last several episodes that we've done, as well as the previous series. And tonight's subject or topic being hiding in plain sight and being neurodivergent is, I guess, something that a lot of people don't realize. They don't often realize that there's a neurodivergent in their midst, and if they do, they're not sure how to deal with it or how to communicate, and therefore, most neurodivergent individuals have, as we've discussed before, had to learn how to mask just to survive in our typical everyday kind of world. So tell me, what is this? You chose this topic. What does it mean to you?
I've been hiding most of my life, Mac, in plain sight. The trouble is, no one knows how to deal with someone who's neurodivergent, or even knows what that word means. And we were just talking about this earlier, weren't we, Mac, with Gary? That if you mention, oh, by the way, I'm autistic, like, okay, bye, because no one knows how to deal with us.
And I'm gonna ask you to repeat something that you've said to me, numerous times. But for those who haven't been watching or haven't previously dialed in to come and join us on one of these lives, what would you say to those people who don't know how to deal with you? What is the advice you would give them?
Ask. Find out. We are human beings like you. We are not aliens.
Not from another planet, then?
No. I know men are from Mars and women are from Venus, but that's a completely different matter.
Yeah, that's changing the subject altogether. But and I think that the simplicity in what you've just said there about asking, if you had to summarize, your experience in life when it comes to social events or work or environments where you've been with lots of other people, what would you say the typical response is that you find? I mean, how many people actually ask?
None. They just assume.
And what are the typical assumptions that you? And I'm not sure whether you're assuming this now about the people assuming things about you, but what are the typical assumptions that you faced over the your course of your life?
Unintelligent, crazy, freak of nature.
Well, when it comes to some of the things that you're very good at, you are a freak of nature because you do things like super well, and annoyingly at times, because as an example, through our relationship, there have been things that I've been able to help expose you to, and then you just run off and go, yeah, okay, and then you come back and you do it 10 times better and faster, and I'm like, okay. The master or the student becomes the master, but that's one of the things that I know you wanted to kind of talk about, is that the invisible abilities, as it is for neurodivergent individuals. What would you say, as an example, if people got to know you as Joel Felsenstein, what would you say your superpowers are?
Well, I would actually say I don't have any, but that's just me. I
would say you're lying.
I just see it as an everyday thing for me.
Better turn that on silent.
Didn't know we were having calls in the middle of these interviews now?
It's all good. So when we talk about these superpowers, that for yourself, and just like any of us, any human being who's got a specific skill set, very, very often will underestimate the fact that we just assume that this is something that everybody else can do.
Yeah.
But I look at your superpowers, and you've got several, and one of them obviously being music, and the fact if you look over there, endorsed by, and you see some pretty big brand names that are synonymous with specifically drumming, as an example, and your ability to be able to help neurodiverse individuals really grasp the concept of music, and being able to play, teach them how to actually play themselves as well. And that's something that you specialize in, both on guitar and drums. But then when it comes to the tech side of things as well, you're pretty quick when it comes to figuring out how to use things like video editing software and design software and things like that, which may seem like a natural ability to you, but if I look at my skills and I pick up an example, with our Social Saturday Lives, where I put a banner together and you were like, you finally figured out how to use Canva, and these, and I'd been using it for ages before I introduced it to you, and yet I think it took you a few minutes to kind of figure that out. What would you say to others that are watching about, I guess, the big word assumption, when people come to assuming what neurodiverse, or you specifically autistic people, are capable of?
Well, again, people assume that we are not capable of anything, and even nowadays, I think in some cases you're sent away to somewhere, what I like to call a cuckoo house.
Unfortunately, I understand exactly what you're saying, purely because of my personal experience, having come from South Africa originally, and for me, a big eye-opening moment was several years ago when I first came over from South Africa. Generally, anybody with that is different, as it were, would go into some form of almost like a care home of sorts, and the activities that they would do there were not about trying to build skills, but more of an entertainment side of things, if that makes sense. Keep people busy that are there. as opposed to educating them and helping them get into mainstream education or schools, or learning why are does somebody function differently or work differently. And when I came over to the UK, I had the pleasure of working with some of the biggest charity organizations in the world. And one of those charities I helped do a lot of recruitment for, and I got to work with Hertfordshire University, and they have this program that's now been running maybe for 15, 16 years, where maybe even longer, where they help introduce people into mainstream education. And the individuals that I met, typically if they were living in South Africa, as an example, or in many other countries, they would, as you say, be sent away somewhere that somebody can, look after them, as opposed to try and figure out how to tap into the resources that these humans have and their superpowers and skill sets. And it's still far away from where it needs to be, clearly, otherwise we wouldn't be having this conversation. So, when it comes to what you would like to see in this world, what kind of additional things would you like to see just in everyday life? I'm not talking about business specifically, but just in everyday life, when it comes to being able to empower and enable those individuals who have previously been misunderstood and not given an opportunity to be able to show what they are capable of.
For people to actually, the powers that be, to actually start doing what they have not done really well, and that's actually try. Currently, you're just guessing. You need to try.
Can you expand on that?
Yes, you're putting people into one glove fits all, one hat fits all sort of moral. Instead of using individual programs, like the person is an individual. We are not. We are not all the same. If we were, we would either be in communist Russia or we would be in a lab as robots.
Which, hey,
may I remind the world here that Russia tried to put people, well, the Soviet Union at that point tried to put people in a box. Here's my dad's history lessons coming out, and it backfired spectacularly.
And without getting, I guess, political. No,
that's not political. That's history.
No, that's history. No, I understand. But what I'm saying is, with regards to looking at specific organization, I think that or countries, that's a great example of what effectively happens within non-communist countries, because the behaviors are still the same but isolated to certain individuals. So, as an example, if somebody is different and they're neurodiverse and they are not necessarily understood, they are excluded. They are not part of the kind of mainstream world we live in, and not given the same opportunities. And that is historically due to lack of patience being one of them, lack of understanding. And we touched on this with our conversation with Selena Boyu about the fact that imagine what our world would be like if before you went to school you were assessed for being neurodiverse typical, neurotypical, or neurodiverse, because that way the education system that you get put into can be, something that is of a support structure to be able to give you the best education, to be able to give you the skill sets and help you through the programming that you have. Now, to be fair, coming back with I have a child with ADHD, and
and yourself with ADHD, and yourself
and
with dyslexia,
and things like that. I couldn't imagine a teacher coping with 50 of me or 30 of me in a class.
One's enough.
Yeah, thank you. But at the same time, if the way education was brought about, and it was more, I'm very similar to you in a lot of things where show me and I'll learn. I'm sorry, I'm boring you at this stage.
No.
But Bailey's obviously got you running ragged.
Yeah, Bailey has got running ragged, and then he has the audacity to just
sleep while you are trying to work.
Yeah.
It's a dog's life, eh? But like you and I, as an example, are very similar in the sense that we learn by seeing things and learning by example and being shown, whereas other individuals are okay with being given a textbook and having to learn, read through that and be able to kind of join the dots, as it were. But for individuals like us, I'm very visual. So for me, show me once and I can go and do it, and I could probably find better ways of doing it very quickly. Whereas there's a lot of theory and education systems that are very much, throwing information at you, which then trying to see that logical pattern of how it is applied just doesn't make sense. So, I really do think that if there was an opportunity where children were assessed early on in life, and it was a standard.
Yeah.
I mean, we have to get our vaccination shots and all these things as kids before you even go to school, and all these tests that they put you through to kind of learn what your abilities are with regards to being able to read, and there are loads of other tests that are done in education to be able to understand where children are. But the basics of just understanding how they're programmed has never been included. And for somebody like yourself who's not had that, I mean, you were diagnosed fairly early on, but the education system, let you down in ways where you moved to several different schools. If there was more focus on being able to have children, as an example, get assessed earlier on, because I guarantee you, I mean, I'm sure you had other people that you came across in your schooling that you knew were neurodiverse but weren't getting that kind of support as well. Yes?
Yes, that is correct. That is correct, Matt.
And when we're looking at that, and that's an example of people that are hiding in plain sight. How many people are now in their 20s, 30s, 40s being diagnosed with whether it be ADHD or dyslexia, dyspraxia, or one of the neurodiverse kind of labels, and only then they're able to figure out why they think like they do or why they operate like they do. So, what are your thoughts about, we've got Selena there, absolutely early diagnosis. Selena, thank you so much for listening in. And I'm just going to pop her comment on there. And I'm looking forward to having a conversation with you and Selena this Friday as well, where we can expand on this conversation. But the hiding in plain sight, what kind of examples can you give us that you have seen throughout your life that people aren't aware of, should I say?
I appear, for wanting a better word, I hate this word, I appear normal.
And what does that even mean?
I've got news for you. There's no such thing as normal.
That's exactly my point. I look at all the individuals I've met in my life, and I'm attracted to those people who tend to be quite bold in who they are and comfortable in their own skin. And each one of us are far from normal.
Yes.
And normal's, in a word, boring. Yeah, kind of. So why?
To put it politely, if there isn't, it's like I'm probably gonna get every single maths person on my back after I say this, but it's like the word normal, it kind of doesn't exist. It's not really there. It doesn't exist. It's like zero. Zero is not a number, apparently. It's not a number. And normal, as far as I'm concerned, is not a word.
I have to agree with you on that one, because if anybody was to I guess try and write a paper on what is normal, you're gonna have what's normal for them.
You're also gonna have someone somewhere. He's gonna say one line, whatever the government wants.
Whatever
the media wants. That's normal.
Yeah, whatever
whatever we're told. Yes, whatever we're told that day is normal.
So, I think over the last 3-4 years, we've definitely experienced that the world is not in a normal place anymore. And, I'm in some ways glad, because it's definitely shaken things up, and being able to supercharge the whole kind of digital transformation that we've gone into, being able to allow conversations like this. Because, LinkedIn Live, as an example, which we're using now, was limited to very few people prior to the pandemic. And, unless you were a super influencer, you didn't have the opportunity to be able to have access to be able to share your voice. And places like LinkedIn and, various other platforms that have now allowed live streaming, but also live conversations and audio, as an example, which has become very powerful, has allowed us to really have an opportunity to educate people much faster. But the discussion we had earlier today in a different meeting with regards to, if it doesn't impact me, I'm not really, it's not something of interest. And until people are exposed to somebody that is neurodiverse, or they themselves find out they are, or they have a family member or an employee, where they're directly impacted, unfortunately, the education process is going to be very slow. So this is where, I really do think it needs to be part of, the school curriculum on teaching, the difference between and just basic human communication on how individuals work. Because one of the stigmas that we've spoken about before is, because you're seen as different,
that means you're weird.
Well, you weird, you get told that you're disruptive, or that
or you get mixed up with another word which begins with R.
Yeah. Again, and or crazy, or all kinds of weird and wonderful things, including being excommunicated in schools, where you get thrown out of the class, or and that's because of lack of education, just for teachers, as an example. And a lot of the time, if teachers were equipped with being able to see and understand what neurodiversity was all about, they would be able to really support the children and the education system in a much better way. But unfortunately, that is left to generally parents to try and figure out and get assessments done.
And teachers to make it up as they go along, because they are being led down a blind alley by everyone else.
Well, they're not given the education and support. I mean, the amount of hours that go into the average person or average teacher having exposure to neurodiversity, unless they personally have had exposure or an interest in that, or they've gone and studied that as part of their degree, or had volunteer experience, it's very likely that they would miss some of the basic signals that would help them to be able to support children better, in schools. But also, by teaching pupils about people, understanding people with their differences, we're still such a far way off, because we still have massive challenges. They do now have, as an example, religious education, which gives people an opportunity to learn about other traditions and religions.
Yeah.
But we still don't have education about, things like neurodiversity and understanding that, so that children know that when somebody's different, it's not an opportunity to go and bully and pick on them, but it's an opportunity to learn a new skill on how to communicate with somebody that's different, and come from a position of love and understanding, as opposed to because children can be, as we know, very cruel, and it's so easy for the children that are different to be the brunt of their cruelty, as it were. So again, it's a thing that, would you find, enforces masking in everyday life?
Yes, I would say that, because as we're always constantly told about what to do and how to act and stuff by everyone which isn't us, which I find hilarious. It's almost like we're being controlled in a way.
That's quite a strong statement, yet very much on point.
Now the way of saying it, Mac, and if you ask any person in a position of power, like anyone in media, they'll literally deflect the question because they know it's true, but they don't want to answer.
So you're talking about media and politics, maybe?
Yeah. Anyone which likes to deflect questions.
So,
anyone who likes to deflect questions, I believe Rishi Sunak's reshuffling his cabinet anytime soon. So please send your CVs in.
Especially if you have some experience with neurodiversity, because maybe you can make an impact on the education system. And hey, Emu, great to have you on here, saying she's happy to tune into another great conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any questions, anybody who's listening at this stage, or even if you watch the replay of this, do us a favor, do drop some either questions, statements, comments, anything that can contribute to the conversation that we can add in, or maybe questions I can ask Joel. Happily drop them into the comments, and we will get back to you. If it's post, we'll do that on the comment section, or who knows, maybe you'll do it during this live session and we can answer the question for you while we're at it. But Joel, when you talk about that control, that naturally there's so many different reasons for this and I can't even say perceived control.
None of them are good either.
Because it is control. But there are reasons for different reasons for these. One maybe being patience, because a lot of people just don't have the patience to try and figure out what the challenge is, so they'd rather just say, can you fit in, or there's another word. I used to have a boss like that, many years ago, who that was his kind of motto, fit in, or the other F word.
Right, yes.
And I used to think, is that a productive way of working? And for him it was, because he was trying to get to a point very quickly to try and achieve certain things and make sure the outcome happened fairly quickly. But what he was trying to do is attract people that were willing to kind of move at the speed that he was. But at the same time, he clearly upset, should we say, lots of people along the way. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being focused and targeted, but at the same time, the control word that you use there, I just want to go a little bit deeper into that, if that's okay, Joel, and ask you what that word control has meant to you through your experience.
It's not incredibly difficult. You're always told from a child how to act, what to say, what to think, and manners, of course. And then you're told that's continued in other respects throughout your entire life, from other people, not necessarily your family, but from other people which don't even know you, which is kind of disturbing. And also with Google controlling all our data and knowing exactly where we are and what we're doing on a day-to-day basis.
So how has the control, as you put it,
without often our consent,
how has this control impacted you, as an example?
It's taken me a long time between when I was a child to now to actually want to make my own path, because up until then I was like, am I here? Am I there? What the hell am I doing? And what the heck is my purpose? You're telling me one thing, you're telling me the other thing. I got 2 ears, yes, but I've only got one brain to process the information.
And how's that made you feel through being told as opposed to asked?
We got a question, Mark.
Oh, I think I lost you there for a second. I was saying, how does it make you feel with regards to being told as opposed to being asked?
Not very good. And in certain respects, it's taken me a lot of restraint from actually losing my shit.
It's interesting, because it's one of the things with ADHD that I find personally is, it's a trigger to get your back up against the wall very quickly, but it's something that when you're masking, you have to what's that wonderful word, comply, and it doesn't result in positive outcomes. And I'm just seeing those questions that have been popping up there. And firstly, Felipe, hey, always great to have you in the audience. If you're not connected with that man, with him or Emo or any of the guys, and Selena in the audience, please do go and connect with them. Incredible human beings who...
we've got 3 questions coming from Felipe.
I have seen a few there. So let's go to the first one, which Emo asked. So let's... you've put it back up. You clicked faster than I did, as always. So how can employers be a better champion, ally, and advocate for neurodivergent employees? So let's get your thoughts on this.
Well, I think a good question. First of all, hire some.
I'll expand on that in a minute.
I don't want to state the obvious here, but hiring some would go a long way in being all those things. And show, by all means, show them what tasks to do, but let them process it and do it in their own way, and don't micromanage.
I think from conversations we've had in the past, Joel, not only between you and I, but also other organizations that support neurodiversity, whether it be autism or ADHD or many of the others. The biggest challenge that you kind of hit the nail on the head is, start off with just maybe hiring some. And the challenges that we face there are numerous. I mean, one of the things that we have seen, and through speaking to lots of organizations, the thread has been very common when it comes to Emo's question about how can employers better champion. And what I tend to find is there are a lot of organizations that show that they are supportive for whether it be DEI or whatever brave statement they've put out there to show that they're doing the right things on a perception basis. But when it comes to the real nuts and bolts, we know, and I don't want to mention any organizations' names, but we know organizations that have been around for decades that have been trying to help large organizations through this process by putting in skills support and giving them onboarding support and training and coaching. But what they find is they'll go into organizations and they'll do the basics. They'll do the meet with the hiring managers, give them some basic training. And effectively, that organization then has ticked a box to say, our team have received some training on neurodiversity and supporting our staff. I'd love, as an example, Felipe, who is very much on board with this kind of conversation, to drop in the kind of things that their organization does. But what we find is that post that training and learning, when it comes to actually these organizations being able to go, okay, well, let's help you employ neurodiverse individuals, that's kind of where things just seem to go silent, and then there's no activity after that. And we've seen over the last few years, when we first looked at this, it was something like 23% of autistic people are in full-time employment. And then the figure went up to 26, 27%. But a lot of it's been reclassified as to what's full-time employment. Some of it's, it's in employment, and that could be, 3 hours
part-time,
a week. Yeah, exactly.
Voluntary.
And it's, and this is where statistics are very much, you've really got to look at the detail to understand what the true message out there is. And this is where I think there's a great opportunity for organizations. If I look at my experience working with large corporates, and the amount of neurodiverse individuals I have come across that have masked their way into an organization because they have no choice. But when I've seen, there've been 1 or 2 organizations that I've worked with where the support for neurodiverse individuals has been incredible, because they realize the skill set that they bring. And not only that, the dedication that they have for the opportunity that they are given, and they tend to be long-term employees. They go in and they, once they figure out what it is that they need to do, whether it's programming or coding or any specialist skill, they become some of the top in the world at what they're doing. But by giving that right support, doing things like assessments on the organization as to are they working at with the right tools, have they got the right lighting, have they got the right sound, are they able to wear ear defenders without, and is the culture within the organization supportive of people that are different so that they can work without feeling that they are weird or being singled out. Does that make sense?
Yes, but the sad part is of that, Mac, is the organizations, the answer to that is a big fat no.
So what I'd like to throw out there, Joel, because at the end of the day, based on our experience,
if they were already doing that, they wouldn't be needed for us.
Well, I think there still would be, because there are not that many organizations that we are aware of that do implement these things. And one of the things that I'd love to see is, if people are watching this or they know of organizations where they've implemented some great support structures, and they can share case studies of where it's been effectively rolled out and the outcomes of that. I'd love to be able to see that, and I'd love to know what some of the very large companies are doing out there, like whether it be LinkedIn or Google or Facebook or any of those large corporates, to show what their neurodiverse support is like within the organizations, because I know I've been into Google's offices a few times, and they definitely London one and a few others, and they do go out of their way to make a interesting and comfortable work environment, but how far that goes, whether it goes into supporting the neurodiverse side of things, and what extent, would be interesting to find out. I know the last time I went, they still had cows on the ceiling, and you were allowed there were dogs roaming around and cats roaming around the office, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool, because it really changes the environment quite a bit. So if you know of organizations that are doing a great job at this, share that, because we don't just want to be talking about what's not being done. We also want to go and shed the light on what is being done and what is good out there. Emo, there are organizations out there that are trying to make a difference, and there are so many smaller organizations. Unfortunately, it's very much geographic, that I'm finding from our experience over the last few years, where it will be a small organization that helps a certain council in a certain area in the country, that they've got to support there because people have been exposed to it, and therefore there's been some news and PR around it, and therefore they've developed programs. Or it's been somebody, a parent or somebody individual who's been impacted by a family member or friend, and therefore they've started up these organizations. And most of these are passion projects that we've come across. And they've really gone to town with putting lots of incredible support and technology together. But unfortunately, it's not, this is what RockstarX is all about, is shedding light on what those local guys are doing, so that internationally, groups can collaborate and work together to be able to really speed up the process as to what's available out there. Because if we can share that kind of skill set and the knowledge and the work that's already been done, we can really ramp up how things go. Just looking at Felipe's question over there, how can employees improve the application and interview process? Joel, what are your thoughts?
Well, I was just reading Selena's answer to that as well, and in some cases, I would say, for people who like to do, I'd say rip up the written application for that particular situation, and put some practical stuff in there instead, so you can actually see what they can actually do. Because any piece of paper can tell you very well what they can do, but if they have got the piece of paper and then can't do what it says in the way you want it, that's a complete waste of time.
It's interesting because I've had I guess the privilege and also the frustration of having to interview probably over 50,000 people in my life, if not more, through various organizations, and also teaching recruiting managers how to recruit and go through it. I think one of the biggest challenges that Felipe touches on there as well is the training that recruitment or hiring managers have when it comes to the interview and hiring process. Now, if we look at LinkedIn as an example, if you go and put your CV and apply just through LinkedIn, it's you're just going to be a number in there. You need to be able to stand out. You need to make sure that you have certain search terms within your in that. So I think reviewing their own processes to see whether they are accessible. And when we talk about accessibility, that's for neurodiverse, for visually impaired, hearing impaired, all of those things are something that every employer should have a process in place. But I guess the first thing would be training to make sure that there is a system or process in. I've seen lots of organizations where hiring managers kind of go off what they've seen on telly, and they walk into the room and tell me your favorite thing. What's one challenge that you've faced and how did you deal with it? And they go through all a lot of the kind of very mundane stuff that's been around for the last 50 years, and they haven't really adapted their interview style or process. So if there are organizations out there that are watching this that specialize in teaching people about these processes to support neurodiverse, we'd love to hear from you as well. We are speaking to a few at the moment, which we hope to bring as part of our live interviews to kind of share some of these skill sets that people can bring out.
I do like this answer. I like this answer a lot.
Pravin, absolutely spot on. And I mean, Joel, how do you feel as an example? Let me ask you this question because it's something that we've discussed before with regards to when you're applying for something. Are you comfortable letting people know that you are neurodivergent so that you can get the right support and help? Because my personal experience is people tend to mask so that they can fit in, which means they really have to work so much harder to get into a position where it doesn't necessarily have to be that way if people know that the support is required.
Right. Let me answer you in two parts there. Number one, I have used the masking for most of my jobs. The only one I couldn't use the masking for, actually the only two I couldn't use the masking for, shall I say, was my dad's school, because obviously
you're working with a family member kind of new.
And my cousin's company.
Again, family company.
Exactly.
So what does that say? I mean, does that say that if you've got no choice but to divulge it, then you will, but under any other circumstances, you won't?
That's correct, yes.
So, on one side, that's a challenge.
It's like I'm leading a double life.
So, on the flip side, is if the company doesn't have the support structure in place or not willing to look at that support structure, you've already kind of had yourself opted out of the selection process because of the fact that you have said, so therefore you don't have the opportunity. So I'd love people's thoughts on that in the comments, because do you put that on the application process saying, do you need special support? I think that should be there, and I think people should be comfortable enough to be able to ask for that support and help. I mean, if I'm, have to use an example of somebody that applies who may be in a wheelchair, and they're applying for a position on the ninth floor of an office building, and they don't have any way to get up other than the stairs, then, and I know, that's something that's been addressed for years, but still, there are many places that still don't even cater for that properly. So straight away, you're putting that individual at a disadvantage by not letting them divulge something that could actually make them a super achiever within your organization and make a huge difference to your bottom line.
Exactly. Yes, I was just reading some of the comments. That's why I was like staring over there. I am not high. In the slightest, or drunk, but
just exhausted from puppy chasing.
Yes, it's been So he's been both a blessing and.
You can say it, a curse. Just looking at some of these comments, I love Provin's comment over there. Feeling safe enough to be yourself means you can you can unleash your best, or be unleashed to be your best self.
Exactly.
Now, the challenge we have of that is people, that fear of being your own self. I mean, it took me years on LinkedIn to kind of think about me being me, as opposed to trying to emulate what I thought other people thought good looked like, if that makes sense. And only once I started kind of going, okay, well, how about I just do me? There's a lot less thinking, but also you live a much more fulfilled life through doing that. Now, you've already mentioned, Joel, that by being controlled, you really haven't had that opportunity to live your best life yet.
No.
And I mean, how does that make you feel?
I feel like I'm a pawn in an extremely long game of chess.
I shouldn't laugh, but it is, it's almost, and I'm being a visual person, and we know how many squares there are supposed to be on a chessboard, but I could only imagine it being like a pawn on a chessboard where, hold on, I've passed halfway, but I still can't see the end line, because it just, you keep having all these different things that come up, whether it be, applying for the perfect role, which you can do with your eyes closed, but because there's no support within the organization to give you the best work environment, or the patience to be able to help you train in the right way that supports you best, that means your ultimate abilities could never actually come to fruition, because you just never get that opportunity.
That's correct. And until now, I hadn't had that, or felt that.
And I remember our road trip down to Cornwall and coming back, and looking at a lot of the things that we take for granted, and when I say we, I'm talking about the general population, because it's the same. Like if you have, for people that haven't experienced cancer, they don't really know much about it. They know that it's there and there's different forms, but it's very high level. But until they've actually experienced support, either themselves going through it or supporting somebody who's going through it, with all the different treatments and the real challenges that come with that. I look at some of the things we discussed, and as an example, being on feeding tubes up until the age of 18, the restriction on not being able to go and do little things like going to play football with your friends, or go out in the playground and scuff your knees and your elbows like most kids get to do, or because you're autistic, you don't get seen for the person that you are, but rather the label. And because of that label, it is assumed that you are unable to do so much. When I can tell you, once you've met Joel, you'll know that it's actually the opposite. Because when I first met you, Joel, I knew that you mentioned that you was it leg braces that you had on as a child, and you only really decided to take that big leap of faith and actually live off these daily sachets that keep you alive after you were 18. But if somebody was to initially see you and assume based on what face value, they probably wouldn't assume that you would go and hike up a blooming mountain at a hell of a pace. And at the first time I went out with Joel and we went to go and look at this wonderful venue down in Cornwall, we were taken on a little sightseeing trip of the additional land that they have. And I said to me being kind or trying to be kind, said to the guy, no, well, I don't think we'll do the whole walk around. And Joel was like, I want to see everything. And I was like, oh no. And that's because I'm unfit as hell. And I thought, well, we'll say that I'm trying to not have Joel going traipsing around the whole forest. And I couldn't keep up with Joel. And this is, again, judging a book by its cover. And I've made those mistakes as well. But this is the thing that I love about the relationship we have, is we can have an open conversation and I can say, hey, Joel, what about this? And, things like relationships and dating and things that you haven't had the ability to be able to have those conversations openly, because most people assume, well, you don't, or you can't, or you won't, or they have an assumption. And this is where having these open conversations are so important. What are your thoughts on that, Joel? I've just thrown so much at you, man.
Having the right relationships with the right people and the conversations as well is extremely important. And if you don't, contrary to a certain football team national anthem, you will always be walking alone.
I've just come from there. Joel, I'm firstly, I want to take my hat off to you for being willing to have these conversations, because they can't be easy. To firstly, broach the subject, but also have to admit how isolating and lonely that journey has been. And I'm sure you come across people who just have no idea about the things you've had to overcome, just so that you can, go and post on LinkedIn, or just to show up and talk on here. I mean, how's the journey been for you?
Long and winding. I can't remember that song.
You remind me of my mother-in-law breaking out in song just with a suggestion of some words that sound like a lyric. But are you enjoying the journey and the process of educating people about the challenges you've been through?
I am, yes. I am. I would like to get more in person than behind a 15-inch MacBook, but it's
And I think that's something that we have been in discussions of, about doing in-person events. I know you do some in-person events, but we are talking about and looking for organizations that we can partner with to put on events. I used to be part of a fantastic event back in South Africa many years ago called 1-to-1. And what that did was allow for neurotypical people and neurodiverse people to come together for a day, and you basically become buddies for a day, and they've got, it's like a whole festival, and you just hang out for the day and get to know. And the education for me and how it opened my eyes to various what are classed as disabilities was an incredible inspiration to see what is possible when you just show somebody time, care, listen, have some understanding, and be willing to, as you say, Joel, ask, but actually care about the answer.
Yes, it would be nice. And as usual, you asked at the beginning of this. What's my superpower? And I have to say that my superpower has to be going over what you said in the private chat about 45 minutes.
I was waiting at 46 minutes for you to go, told you so. But conscious of that. But we I think we will still have, probably for as long as we live, copious more conversations.
Yes.
And the aim is
hopefully in the same room and in the same office building at the same time.
Absolutely. But also, at events around the world where we can go and meet some of these incredible people, face to face, like Felipe and Pravin and Emu and Metalina and Gil and various other people that have so much to bring to the party. And I can see that Emu has mentioned Martha there. Martha, for some reason, your settings don't allow us to see your name on LinkedIn, which means go and have a look at your settings on LinkedIn with regards to how the public get to see your profile.
We've had a couple of those.
You might be missing out on a lot of opportunities purely because of a setting on LinkedIn. Hey, great to see all of you. Joel, with wrapping up, I've mentioned various kind of intros and people that we would love to connect with. But what are your final thoughts when it comes to those people that are hiding in plain sight? What is the kind of message that you would like to give them on your journey to bringing RockstarX, to the rest of the world?
Well, like a cockerel, one must strut their stuff.
I was not expecting that, but now I have this image in my head. I'm not going to be able to get that image out of my head, but so for those of you listening that have been hiding in plain sight, be prepared to strut your stuff, as Joel says. I'd love somebody to go and create an image off the back of that about strut your stuff. I can see a very proud cockerel walking into a room, chest out, head back, going, "Here I am." Let's start embracing and being more empathetic and also compassionate, towards our fellow human beings, regardless of their religion, creed, race, or neurodiversity. At the end of the day, we're all human beings, and let's learn to love that and love our differences. So with that, thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back in, I think it's a couple of weeks, Joel.
Yes, but we will be on the audio version on Friday.
Absolutely. So watch out for that link coming soon. We'll see you on Friday. That's is it 1:00 on Friday? 1 p.m. British Standard Time.
I believe we said that, yes.
Yeah, so 1 p.m. British Standard Time. Watch out for the link on both my profile, Joel's profile, and coming to Selena's profile soon.
No, Standard Time.
Summertime. I keep saying that. I don't know why. Anyway, even I can be wrong often. But hey, we're all human here. So thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'm wishing you all an incredible morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are around the world.
Thank you, everybody, and we will see you on Friday and in 2 weeks as well. All the best.